Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon sessions at Birmingham Tech Week 2020. And of course, today is all about scale-ups, how to scale up your organization, how to grow in the right way, and how to make sure you've got all the fundamentals in place. And next, we've got Amazon ScaleUp Stories, carrying on the Amazon theme. So of course, we heard from Thomas Blood this morning, the digital innovation lead at Amazon. And then we had a fantastic session from Emma Jones from Enterprise Nation, launching the Amazon Small Business Accelerator and Bootcamp in the West Midlands. So yeah, really good stuff going on there. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Avin Ribeiro and Dr. Asha Patel. So I'm going to let Pam introduce them in just a moment, but if we can go to the next slide, please. Just want to say a big thank you to our supporting partners. We're running the week in association with Tech Nation, the West Midlands Growth Company, and the Department for International Trade. A big thank you to supporting Tech Week, but also for the work they do across the West Midlands to support entrepreneurs and tech businesses, but also the work they do nationally and internationally to promote the West Midlands, encourage inward investment, and also to help businesses export their products and services as well. So thank you to all of those organisations. And of course, the week wouldn't be possible without our wonderful sponsors. Big thank you to NatWest, who are our lead and headline sponsor for this year, for supporting us, but also for the work they do again around the region and across the UK, especially through their Entrepreneur Accelerator. And then of course, thank you to the rest of the sponsors, Copper, Culture Group, BJSS, SideTrade, and BMET for supporting the week. And of course, thank you to our 2020 partners, real good mix of public and private sector organisations, DCMS, and of course, Tech UK, and a special shout out today to West Midlands 5G, who I think are running 5 events during the week, and something we're particularly proud of, our coverage and 5G networks across the West Midlands. So with that, I'm ready to hand over to our host. So our host is Pam Shimar from NatWest, who is the Entrepreneur Development Manager. But Pam's so much more than that. She's a fantastic ambassador for entrepreneurs across the region, and gets a lot involved in loads and loads of charity work, but also is involved in Birmingham Tech. So he's one of our directors, and it's great to be working alongside Pam. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Pam so she can introduce you formally to our 2 panelists.
Thank you, Yanis. Thank you so much for that. Okay, welcome everybody. It's wonderful to have you here today, and I am delighted, absolutely delighted to be speaking to these 2 amazing people. I'm gonna have to contain my excitement. I do get really kind of excited, guys. So I'm gonna start off with Dr. Asha Patel, because she's on our Accelerator Hub. So I just want to say a massive thank you and welcome to Dr. Asha Patel, CEO and Clinical Psychologist of Innovating Minds, multiple award winner, entrepreneur, and recently also winning the Amazon ScaleUp Awards, which we'll talk about today, winning this Asian Chamber Awards, and also NatWest SE 100 Awards, and much, much more. So we'll do a little bit of delving into Asha shortly and find out more about you. I'm also delighted to introduce Avin. Welcome, Avin, founder and CEO of Housekeep. Housekeep founded in 2014, and within 3 months, I read upon you saying you already raised £1 million investment within 3 months. We want to hear more about that in terms of your scale-up journey. Again, an array of awards demonstrating your success and your tech success, and most recently, the impressive Growth Award for the UK Business Tech Awards. Welcome, both of you. Hello, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
It's lovely to have you here. Okay, I'm going to go straight in and just literally going to find a little bit more about yourselves. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourselves as entrepreneurs? I'll start off with that. Asha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Asha. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my experience before Innovating Minds was working in forensic mental health settings, so working with high-profile murderers and sex offenders. Innovating Minds was basically set up because I wanted to work at the other end of the spectrum, and noticed that actually educational settings could do more. So I used my business background. I grew up in a family business and combined that with my clinical expertise to find Innovating Minds.
Super, thank you so much. And wow, what an interesting line of work. Thank you, Asha. Arvin, over to yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. Hi everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me, Pam. I've not got quite as interesting a story as Asha, I'm afraid. So my background, I'm a northerner by trade from Manchester, and sort of meandered down south through Oxford to London, where the first part of my career was in investment banking and management consulting, so helping big businesses. Then I moved into venture capital, so was part of a team of 7 people. We managed about £500 million, which we invested across high growth companies across the UK, companies a bit like Housekeep or Innovating Minds. And then back in 2013-14, I decided that I'd had enough of giving advice and I'd rather do some things. And so I didn't have any specific love of cleaning. I am a neat freak, and I do actually quite like cleaning, but that wasn't why I set up Housekeep. I spent a bit of time thinking about markets that have interesting dynamics, so big markets, fragmented supply base, and where technology can fundamentally change the way a service is delivered. I was thinking about, what Just Eat had done for takeouts, what Uber were doing for taxis. And I put that together and had a look at some interesting markets. House cleaning came up high on the radar, and we got started. I did a lot of the cleaning myself initially to try to understand how it all worked. And then thankfully, I'm not doing any of the cleaning anymore, and Housekeep's grown pretty successfully over that period.
That is fascinating as a journey as well. So don't you undersell yourself, Arvin. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, wonderful. So question to you both now. I'll go straight in there. How did it feel to win the Amazon ScaleUp Award? So absolutely phenomenal. How did it feel? You want to go first?
Yeah, so I'll go. So for me, I when we was shortlisted, I was a bit gobsmacked to say, well, wow, we were on the shortlist, and I was preparing to go to the awards ceremony, and I literally was going because of people out of Dragon's Den was going to be there, and I'm a massive Dragon's Den fan, and I was looking at who was up against and kind of said, oh, we definitely haven't won, but I'm going to go because of the networking. So when I got the email to say we won the award, I was kind of double checking, like, have they made a mistake? I even checked our application to make sure it was all factual in there. So yeah, it was really, and it came at a really good time because we'd gone through, it was during COVID, during the lockdown. I was going through a really hard time. I was working endlessly to try and find a way to continue. So yeah, so it was quite an emotional time as well. So it came at a good time, but it was also quite emotional.
That's really brilliant. I'm seeing a pattern here, Asha. I'm sure when you won the Asian Business Chamber Awards, you were toying between the Joshua fight and the Chamber Awards. I'm seeing a pattern here.
I made it in time to pick up my award.
You did, didn't you? And the fight. Brilliant. Thank you. Arvin, over to yourself. How did it feel for you? So such a great accolade as well.
Yeah, I think it's one of the more prestigious awards out there. It's always nice to win. There are a lot of awards out there, but I think this is one of the more serious ones. So it was very nice to win it. I think, I'll fess up that I'm a bit of a numbers guy. I only really care about revenue and margins and profits. So, awards, I'm only mildly interested in unless they give us something to the bottom line. But I think where they really make a difference is, especially in times like this, where all businesses have been fighting hard to keep moving forward, to survive in some cases. I think they're a real good badge for the team of, hey, this is a team and a business that's going in the right direction, and especially against such strong competition. So I think where these awards really have a big impact are team morale and hiring and kind of building the right halo around the business, because of course, you need the bits that I like, the numbers and the spreadsheets, but you also need the storytelling and the kind of culture. And I think it's the latter part that they really have a big impact on.
Yeah, absolutely. And echo that. I think it's great having the strength and the business growing. But I think that's almost the icing on the cake, isn't it? Having those awards is, you know, I always hear it as from entrepreneurs that actually this is other people telling us we're doing a great job as well. So it's almost like a signposting that this is going really well. So no, thank you for that. That's brilliant. Thank you, Share. That's a great share. So Asha, over to yourself. Just touching on kind of what you're doing. What's been the hardest thing about your digital transformation?
So the hardest thing for me and for the team was that I'm first and foremost a clinician, and Innovating Minds was a service driven by people. So I used to recruit psychologists, and I've never stepped into digital at all, into technology. And I was toying with the idea because recruitment was becoming a nightmare. I needed to find a way to scale what I was delivering, but without jeopardizing the social impacts of our social impact. So we generate money for social purposes. So I needed to find a way to do that, and technology was the only way. What was the only way to move forward? But the hardest thing for me was knowing where to start. So when I started dipping my toe in the water, it literally felt like I was going to buy a car from a dodgy sales guy or something. Like, there's so many companies out there, the quotes range massively. And I felt like I needed to learn everything, including like coding and Python and different languages and stuff. And actually what I realized is I didn't need to learn all of that. I didn't need to know everything. But what I did need to know is what product and service are we going to be delivering online, and then make the technology fit around that. So I started my problem and what I needed, and I knew that because it was literally in my head. So the most difficult part was actually navigating my way in this industry, because it is new to me. I'm a clinician at heart. So actually it was that whole process, and actually at the other side it's just like project managing, really. And when I saw the first thing, I thought, oh, this looks a bit too simple, there's no fancy tech here, and like, have I missed something? And actually it doesn't need to be. And that's where I think people see tech in a different light and think it's really complicated and you've got to have done coding at uni or something like that. And really that wasn't the case. And I had to overcome that fear of going into this industry that I've got no idea about when I first stepped into it. I think actually, Josh, my mentor from the NatWest, that told me I got a SaaS product. I didn't even know I had a SaaS product. That sounds like I did not have a clue.
I was going to say, I think it's especially aspiring women in tech as well. And I think you don't have to be a trusted advisor in everything, but what you did was you became an expert on the areas you needed to know and outsource what you needed to outsource. But you're quite right. I think the language it can get very full on, but no, well, I think it's brilliant. I think that pivot has been absolutely fantastic. So Avin, over to yourself. How do you ensure that technology was at the heart of all your operations? And how did you do that?
Yeah, sure. Is the audio okay, by the way? I've got a message saying it's still...
It's quite echoey now. Just gone a bit echoey.
We can have echoey or up and down. I'll go for echoey. I'll try
Yeah,
one.
stick with this. It works.
All right, cool. So I guess I'd sort of put that question on its head a little bit. So I don't think of Housekeep as a technology first business. I think of us as a business that has spent time figuring out what users want and how to deliver that to them. And then technology just helps us do it better. So if you take customers, what a customer wants is a good cleaner. What a cleaner wants is to earn the maximum amount of money possible with a minimum travel effort. Now, you can do this manually. You can find the right customer for the right cleaner. And where our technology has played has sort of been acting as sort of sweeping up as we've grown. So we've started with what do the users want? What do they really want to build? And then we've applied technology where necessary or needed. And so I guess the way I got my head around technology was by thinking about, if the user wants A and then B and then C, let's build A, B, and C, and we'll use technology to do that. So if a customer wants to find the best cleaner in their area, by definition, you need to build a job matching algorithm that figures out which cleaner is available in that area to do that job on a recurring basis. And sure, that's a complicated lookup, but a human can do it kind of one-to-one. And we started a human doing it on a piece of paper, and then a human doing it in Excel, and then eventually a machine doing it, and eventually the machine gets better than the human. But we started with the user need, and then we built the technology to follow. And so I guess our technology has kind of followed a flow, starting with it would enable a human to do a better job, followed by it would automate a job that a human is doing, followed by eventually the technology has enough data and the ability to think through the data in a way that is more effective than the human. And so we try to draw everything that we build in technological terms back to what does the user want and how does this help them?
So that customer discovery piece really helped build that out in terms of seeking feedback and building it.
Yeah, and that's ongoing. So we very, very rarely build technology. We build things that users tell us they want, and technology is a way of delivering that, is the way we think about it.
Brilliant. No, it's that's really impactful. Turning it on its head is making it look in a whole different way. I was going to say, if anybody does have questions, please do pop them in the Q&A and the chat box, and we will have time for questions at the end as well. So pop them in there. Okay, so something for both of you now. So what advice have you got for organizations who are looking to go from startup to scale up? So there's been a bit of a transition. I say a bit, but there's been a huge transition. Startups, to scale up, what's your experience of that, and what advice would you give?
My one piece of advice is invest in your systems and your foundations. So make sure things like your HR processes, your finance, your marketing, your team are stable. So because when we went to scale up, it was those infrastructures in place that has enabled us to scale up and respond pretty quickly. So those processes in place, and knowing particularly your financial processes as well. So understanding your forecasting, your bottom line, your margins. So really forensically analysing those has enabled us to scale, because when we've gone through scale, it literally feels like a startup. And because we shifted as well from a digital transformation, it felt like actually we've gone back to being a startup, but because we've got the infrastructures and systems in place, we've been able to springboard a lot quicker than when you are a startup and just developing those, putting them into place.
So I think it's really interesting, because as a startup scales, you mentioned like your team, then how the culture changes as well. And I mean, did you find that a challenge, or is that something you kind of really mapped out from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. I had half of my team that are tech averse, so really don't like technology. They're clinicians, and then the other half that was really excited, and I needed both to come on board with me. So as was developing the technology, they was getting involved and seeing the prototypes that were being developed and the click-throughs, for example. So the culture for a while, actually, because I had to take a step back to be able to develop the products, it did where they were holding each other, but because it was a strong core team, they was able to carry on running Innovating Minds, and me not being so present really. So now where it is people now adjusting to what we are doing, but without compromising. So we've never compromised on our values and our purpose. So that's always been at the heart. And that's what's drawn people into working for Innovating Minds, is those two things. There's the purpose, the value, the social impact. So it hasn't lost that, it's kept the culture.
So going from startup to scale up and making sure that purpose-led trait is still there and still true to kind of what the core was. Okay, no, thank you, Asha. That's really interesting. I've been over to yourself for the same question.
It's a bit of I'm better answer this, but I'd basically echo what Asha said, I think. And I'll try to put that in my own words, but I think she's got it spot on. So a quote that sort of resonates with me well is, as a founder, as a startup founder, your job is to build a product that people love. Whereas as a CEO or a scale-up, leading a scale-up, your job is to build a company that builds products that people love. And it's that difference between building a product and building a company, I think, is the difference between startup and scale-up in terms of our jobs, I suppose. And I think there are a couple of parts to that. The first is culture and people, as Asha said. So figuring out where you're trying to go and pointing the people in that direction becomes more important once you're past sort of 10 or 15 people. At that point, you can kind of man-mark people by, going to the pub. I mean, pandemics don't help with that either, for that matter. But, you kind of know how everyone feels and where everyone's going, and everyone kind of knows what you want to do. And at about 15 people, we found that we had to start writing down what is our purpose, what is our mission. We kind of just, we're doing things that we like doing, basically, until then. Solving problems that we like solving. But you have to start writing that down, being more cognizant about who you recruit, who you promote, who you fire, frankly, as well. If people don't have the right culture, you can't keep them in your organization. They don't get gelled in or gelled out when you're more than 10 or 15 people. It becomes disruptive. And so we had to codify and really recruit to our values, promote to our values. So that's, I guess, one part of it around people and culture. And then the second is this sort of organizational piece. So you can't just solve all of the problems simultaneously anymore. And my job and Ash's job moves away from being chief problem solver and chief solution finder to building an organization that figures out what are the problems on its own and solves them on its own. And again, a lot of that will come back to people in terms of reshaping the senior team, the wider team, building for the long term. And I think one of the approaches that we've taken is either we're going to do something back of envelope and just get the quickest version out possible, or if we're going to do it properly, we're going to do it well and we're going to make it last. So, a year and a half ago or a year ago or so, we went through deciding what's our internal review process going to be, codifying everything, writing it down in excruciating detail. But that's something we can use for years, not for days. And getting that balance right between that startup, short-term urgency and the long-term, the legals, the HR, the finance, the forecasting, the accounts, it's hard. It's never clear when you should look at for a short-term horizon or a long-term horizon. And I think that's where good leaders eventually sort of earn their money, because they're making these choices with some data, but a lot of uncertainty and using a lot of kind of gut instinct of what's the right way to build this business for the next phase. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that good judgment, addressing those kind of core skills is really important. So I think what I also find is businesses which are starting up and then scaling up, there's that element of not wanting to let go. So, having to delegate to your people. You're both smiling now. So do you want to give me any kind of thoughts on that? Because I know I have entrepreneurs who are challenging letting go, still want to hold on to everything, but you have to make that shift, don't you, when you're scaling up? So do you want to build on that and how that was for your businesses?
Yeah, for me, I know I'm a control freak. Because I started off on my own. I'm a sole founder. So when you're used to doing it your way, you just kind of think no one else can do it any better. So also they just don't do it the same way, and therefore you think it's not any better. But I reached a point where I had to let go because I needed to understand, is it me of why we're selling contracts and we're successful, or is it the model? And that's where I took a risk. I employed somebody and let them manage the first contract, which enabled me to move away from being in the business to working on the business. So it was more of a strategic move, and more because I had the vision of where I wanted to take Innovating Minds. It wasn't a lifestyle business that I wanted. I wanted something I could scale and go through the full process as well. This is my first business I've had, so I want to go through the whole journey. From startup to scaling, taking an investment and all the rest of it. So I had to really work on that control aspect. I know sometimes I still do step on people's toes, but my team are really good at telling me that you're in our territory, move away type thing. And I generally do that when there's another shift that happens in the company and my role changes again, and I haven't figured out what my new job is or my new role is. So I go back to what I know, because it takes me about 2 weeks to reshift and kind of get used to, okay, now in the next phase, I need to move to doing something different.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you. Avin, over to same question to yourself. You're smiling as well, so there must be some stories behind this.
I want to answer with, I'm an excellent delegator and I've got it exactly right. But I suspect if you ask my team members, they might say something slightly different. So there's probably a large disconnect between my self-belief and what other people would observe about me. I suppose I'd agree with, again, everything that Asha said there. I think it is difficult to escape that for a sort of moderately successful founder, you probably have the two ingredients you need, which are critical. The first is ability, and the second is motivation. And it's going to be hard to find people who have the same level of ability and motivation. And, it's just different. They're not the founders of business, but you want that. And you kind of keep trying to hire people who have that. And so I guess the first thing that I've tried to do here is keep improving the quality of the people that we hire. We've always tried to hire well, but I think we've generally hired well in a way that is appropriate for the level that we're at. People say hire great people, and that's great, but probably Bill Gates doesn't want to come and work for housekeeping. He's probably got something better to do, rightly so. And so you hire to the best you can at your stage, but that means if you're successful, you need to keep hiring up levels, kind of keep going up the ladder, and or you need to keep driving people internally up the ladder as well. And we've tried to do a combination of those things by giving people room to grow and to get things right and get things wrong. I guess the second part of this, and this is not me really saying what I've done, but perhaps saying what I would do if I was, clever enough to do it, is I wish I was more self-aware about the matter. It's just hard, right? You have a job to do, and it's just efficient for you to get on and do your job. We don't have oodles of time to sit around scratching our chins and wondering about whether we should delegate or whether we should do something ourselves. And so I wish I was more conscious of the matter over time. And I think there are two elements to it. There's the kind of push and the pull element. So sometimes people are like, hey, can you get out of my hair and leave me alone? And that's good, because you're like, hey, maybe I don't need to do this. And then the other is sometimes events change and they kind of overtake you. So going on a long holiday is very therapeutic for yourself, but also you just find that people have taken things off your plate and you don't really feel a particular need to take it back off them. Or there's a pandemic and you're pretty busy, you don't have time to check every T is crossed and every I is dotted, and so you never end up taking that back. And I found there's been a bit of both. It's just, events have overtaken us, or we've been a bit conscious about it. And over time, I've ended up delegating more and more, all with the lens of, as the team quality goes up, you feel like you can delegate more and you can delegate more.
And that's powerful. I think I think that's a big shift, a big mindset shift as well in terms of delegating. I think the best analogy I'd heard of it is like raising a child or a baby. When you have your baby, you think you're the only one that loves you and you can raise the best in the world. But then you have to hand you over to a nursery who can add more value, and then a school who can add more value, and the grandparents, uncles, aunts going to add more value. And actually it's a village that raises a child. So it's almost that analogy for a business as well. So you see your baby and you think you could do the best for it, but then there's additional support.
So I have a 3-year-old, and housekeeps about 5 years old, and a book that I was reading about how to talk to your 3-year-old is extremely useful as a management tool. It basically try to understand what your child is saying to you. Recognize that. It's like, I understand that you want to have a second treat today or a second ice cream. Try not to use the word but, and just accepts that, right? So, you know, I understand that you want to have a second ice cream. And a second ice cream would actually be really nice. And frankly, I'd quite like to eat 3 ice creams. And then, you know, come up with a position that seems reasonable to the child, as opposed to like, no, you can't have a second ice cream. That's ridiculous. And I think management and child rearing are somewhat similar. It's like, hey, I understand that you want to get promoted. What I would expect for you to get promoted is ABC, as opposed to why would you get promoted? You know, it's kind of, there are some similarities between the two things in style. So yeah, if you want to learn how to be a good manager, then How to Talk to 2-Year-Olds is the book for you.
I'm going to write that one down. Excellent. Okay, so this is a tricky one actually. So what's the biggest failure or the hardest thing you've had to overcome? Obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic and that's challenging in itself. And I guess, you know, you may have had to pivot, so you might want to expand on that. But just looking back on your kind of journeys, Asha, Innovating Minds, nearly, you know, nearly 5 years when I hit that 5-year mark. Again, Avin, you know, business started in 2014. What would you say is the biggest kind of challenges you've both had that would add value in talking to and help the entrepreneurs listening?
For me, it's been on my own because I'm a sole founder. And when you are the driver and you are motivated, you are doing everything and you're strategically seeing everything and doing everything on a day-to-day basis. And even through the growth and the scale-up journey, it's difficult when you don't have somebody else with you, and having to find other people to be around, to talk to has been really important. So I've surrounded myself with like the NatWest Accelerator program, finding mentors or other people who are a similar part of their journey in their businesses, because actually it does affect your own well-being and mental health. I get quite obsessed with Innovating Minds and I live and breathe it, and then I fall out with it as well. So there'll be times where I just don't want to really engage with it and kind of have days where I'll just sit and binge on Netflix, for example. So that makes it really difficult for me. And that's been the hardest part, I think, is that up and down journey, that emotional roller coaster you go on. When you're in a business, whatever stage it's at, you still every day has its challenges. You can get some good news, bad news, and then COVID happened as well at the same time.
And it's interesting that, because I think when you are into employment, you have, you know, line managers you can refer to, and you know, or you can go to your fellow colleagues. I guess, you know, as the sole founder, that you need to surround yourself with support and wider teams. Thank you, Asha. Avin, over to yourself. So equally, you know, what's been your kind of biggest failure, I guess, and hardest thing to overcome?
Yeah, well, I certainly wouldn't underestimate how difficult the first few months of dealing with the pandemic were. You know, probably the hardest thing I've had to deal with professionally. You know, a reasonably, you know, long career. You know, I've sat through recessions before, but this was much harder and much worse. I think there's a lot of challenges to come for that matter. But I guess if I go up a level, I think the point I would perhaps echo is being a sole founder is very difficult. And it's very difficult because basically everything is your problem and everything's your fault. And it is, right? Because anything that goes wrong is your fault. And so you end up in this slightly strange situation where either something is not going well, you know, a metric going backwards, or growth is not as high as you want, or somebody you hired didn't work out. And these are all problems, and you have to solve these problems. So then you're faced with a problem, and you need to find a solution. And these problems are extremely varied. So over time, I could become a good management consultant. Over time, I could become a good venture capital investor by doing it on repeat and by learning. But actually, if things are going well, the challenge is that the nature of these problems is constantly shifting. So in the early days, my problem was to figure out what the customers want, and then what the cleaners want, and then how do you match them up? And then how do you hire someone to match them up? And then how do you hire a tech person to match them up using technology? Whereas now my set of problems is totally different. And so you're constantly facing new problems that you don't know how to solve. And so when I'm on the investor side of the table, what I look for now in teams is people who have shown that they can figure out the answers to problems that they've been thrown across their desk, because what you're going to have to do is solve, I don't know, somewhere between 1,000 and 100,000 problems with a reasonably high success rate over a long period of time. And that's really difficult, because you never get to, the nature of people who start businesses is you don't sit there and spend that much time looking, at the Amazon awards or the, result for last year or the growth rate. That's not what we're motivated by. We're motivated about what's next. And we're sort of impatient types who want to go on to the next thing. And that can be exhausting, because you're kind of constantly battling the next thing. You don't know how to solve it, and there's always more to do. And I think I have, not very successfully, but I've tried to be more cognizant of that and to get better at it. So I don't think what I want to do is spend the next 5 years running as fast as I can through brick walls. And I'm kind of aware of perhaps taking micro breaks. So, taking a step out during the day to go to the gym or wherever it might be, or, log into Headspace or whatever works for you. And also taking macro breaks, taking a few weeks off, spending time with family, and saying, well, if I was to look back with a 5 or 10 year horizon, would I be happy that I spent all of my time running through brick walls? And yeah, actually I would for a large chunk, 80%, 90%, but not for 100%. And look, I won't pretend that it's possible or easy to get that balance right, but I think if you can spend a bit of time looking out 5, 10 years saying, what would I look back on as success? You can then say, hey, maybe I look back on these days that feel really hard and say, oh, actually that was kind of fun, in the same way that I now look back 3 or 4 years to the days where we didn't really have any customers or any cleaners or any revenue or anything to worry about, in a sense. I thought, God, that was really fun. But at the time, it did not feel fun. It felt like a problem. So try to appreciate the moment you're in, and sort of appreciate that it's the journey that's interesting, not the result in the end.
Yeah, and that's really powerful. I think I hear that a lot from entrepreneurs, where they're focusing on the next step and they're not being present. They're not enjoying the journey. And actually, success is great, but you've got to enjoy each stage of it and stop and just take a moment and look and be aware. So I love that. Love how you share that. And I think I'll write that down: macro breaks and micro breaks. So I'm going to literally share that if you're happy with that. So I think that's great. So I think, it's important that, you are the head of the business. You are the face of the business. I think, but you're demonstrating that kind of behavior to your team as well, but also you need to keep your own well-being as well. So I think that's really massive. So thank you for sharing that. So just I want to touch on your the COVID situation currently. So how have you had to pivot or change your businesses during the last kind of 202 days exactly, which has been COVID? What have you done differently in your businesses?
So for us, EduPod, our online platform, was launched February to sell into schools, and then COVID hit. And we kind of estimated we'd probably sell about, 70 licenses over 3 years. And we then reduced that to 5 licenses this year. COVID happened, and actually what ended up happening was there's an increase in demand for service. So we sold about 120 licenses within 3 months. Instead of 70 over 3 years. And also we pivoted as we created a program for children impacted by domestic abuse. So that's where our profits have been invested into. And it was always an idea for me to train facilitators to deliver our program. So turn it into a bit like a trainer, so we could scale that nationally. And what COVID enabled us to do was to take that program and turn it into a train the trainer, but also it forced people to do online training. So now I wasn't no longer looking at venues. I could think about a 3-day training course remotely, remove all the costs associated with delivering face-to-face training, and finding consultants that can deliver around the UK. So COVID has actually helped us in the sense of it's helped us pivot and grow and scale globally now, because we've got international people interested in attending our training and accessing our resources. We've had to do that really fast based on demand. So unfortunately, there has been an increase in domestic abuse, and therefore more children need the support. So now our conversations are more at scale with like local authorities, the fire service, the police services. So we've had to work really hard to meet demand for service. So it's completely flipped us the other way.
That's huge. I think you're spot on there in terms of digital literacy has just changed, hasn't it, overnight in terms of having to upskill. And I think there's been a behavioural change. I mean, you know, I would never book my doctor over an app, and now I would. Do you mean? So there's a massive behavioural change as well in terms of how we approach that digital literacy and how we approach digital support. So I think that's massive. And you're quite right. Sadly, you know, one of the things, byproducts of kind of COVID, kind of me sitting as a magistrate, I have seen that actually domestic violence has gone up. So I think, you know, there's the need and the want has come as a result of that. But that's really powerful to share. I think how you've had to pivot so quickly and meet demand and meet you know what the customer needs. Thank you for sharing that, Asha. Avin, what about yourself? So a completely different business. How have you been affected, or how have you had to pivot during COVID?
Yeah, so there's first of all, the effect was extremely large. So the advice was that if you can't work from home, you can continue to go to work. But there was I think the way the messaging came out wasn't particularly good. And so lots of people interpreted that news as, I can't have a cleaner right now. So we lost tens of millions of revenue in 10 days, which is quite a lot to lose in 10 days. It was like and a bit like trying to escape a burning building quite quickly. It was pretty bad, you know, without any, let's not be unclear about that. So the first thing we did was had we not acted urgently, I don't think it's really much exaggeration to say that there was a good chance that housekeep went under, because things just changed so rapidly. So we acted pretty fast to try to shore up revenue. So we did that by building the ability for customers to keep supporting their cleaner during lockdown. We actually raised prices. We felt like we didn't have any choice, etc. And we also slashed costs. So we just turned everything off. And you know, housekeep set up to grow fast. So there's a bunch of growth costs in there that we just slashed overnight. And we went back to every supplier, and I mean every supplier, and said, you can't pay for this anymore, we're cancelling. And I mean, I went back to Receipt Bank, who we use to process receipts, and we pay £40 a month to, as in every supplier we went back to. No birthday cakes, no birthday cards. We went full on. And actually what that did was it put us in a very strong position, because we had our ongoing revenue still working. And we were able to cut our cost base enough that we could keep our product and tech teams running. So phase one was, you know, make sure you don't die. Phase two was, I guess, okay, so now what are we going to do? And in that phase, we pretty quickly decided that we'd be opportunistic and make some fairly tactical bets and see what worked. So we ended up with a couple of dozen cleaners working in hospitals, for example, with effectively a sort of staffing model where they did all the training and so on. We just provided the people. You know, we were doing some packing up of student lets, etc. But along the way, we stumbled across some things that worked, which we kind of expected would work, like commercial cleaning, like tradespeople, like deep cleaning. And as a consequence, we ended up saying, hold on, these things look pretty interesting. We've always thought that they're sensible additional verticals. We've been extremely focused geographically and on a single vertical until then. And because we were able to keep product and tech running, we kept going. And I guess where that puts us today is in a position where our core business is pretty close to normal, still a bit below. But we've got these new services which are acting as either a hedge, if it takes a long time for our core business to come back, or they layer on top when our core business does come back, and a sort of icing on the cake. And this is very difficult to do with such an uncertainty externally. And I talked a little bit earlier about, you know, I think this is a time where leaders or CEOs or founders is like, here's where we earn our money. But I think this is a period where you've got to take an 18-month view. You know, if this started in spring 2019, where are we going to be in autumn of 2020? And you've got to kind of have the ability to not go under. It's, you know, it's a risk for any business in this situation. Let's not pretend. But also, you've got to take the long view. Where are we trying to get to? How can we get there as fast as possible and make use of every single day in this period? So, you know, we're hiring pretty actively. We're growing a team. We're taking on cost. It's, you know, you've got to balance that against make sure you can keep the lights on. And so I wouldn't say we've pivoted exactly, but I think it's forced us to crack on with some things that we were like, hey, yeah, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do that. We just got on with it and done it and acted pretty urgently in the period. And I think with a bit of luck, where we end up is, you know, next summer, next autumn, suddenly this business is much bigger than it was, more diverse than it was, and it's in much stronger shape going forward.
And what I'm hearing is giving you an opportunity to, number one, diversify and build on your kind of core offering, but then also build, measure, learn, because this is probably stuff you probably thought maybe we could do, but actually I've seen that in a lot of entrepreneurs. It's actually forced their hand to go online. You know, they might have always wanted to not have the premises and go online, or have a service industry in a different way. But actually what COVID has done is force their hand to think in a different way. And that's what I'm hearing in terms of diversifying. So I'm just going to quickly go to the questions. So I'm just going to, I can't believe where the time has gone already, guys. So in terms of questions, I'm going to go to, let's have a look what the question is here. So, okay, this one's really interesting. So Wakil Chowdhury, did you ever doubt that you could build your successful businesses, and how did you tackle it? So we all have that imposter syndrome. It's always there. So how did you overcome that? So those who are looking to start and scale,
I spotted that.
What's your thoughts?
If you're right, Asha, for me to go first on that one. I spotted that question. It really resonated with me, and I'll try not to give you a very long answer, but I'll just tell you about me personally. There's a slight backstory here that I'll tell you first. So when I was a management consultant, you typically do projects that last between 1 and 6 months, usually 2 to 3 months. And it was my first proper job. I was surrounded by extremely bright people. And in every single project, there was a period where I would go and lock myself in the toilets because I just couldn't figure out. It's not that I couldn't figure out what the answer was to the question I was working on. I couldn't even figure out what the question was. I had no clue what I was even being asked to do, and I didn't even know where to start. And it was a real like hit in the stomach moment of I just don't know what I'm doing here. And after 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 projects, when I'd go and lock myself in the loo, I'd be like, oh, this is that time where I don't know what I'm doing. And I figured out that I was learning. This was the bit, because I didn't know what I was doing, I must therefore be learning. And I had a track record after a little while of successfully getting out the other side of this and eventually delivering some good work and people thinking it was a good result. So I built up this track record and I was sort of happy about that. Now, the way I would describe that as a founder, that level of self-doubt, is it's roughly once per day you want to lock yourself in the toilet for the first year. It drops to about once a week. If you're really lucky, it drops to about once a month. And now it's like, I don't know, once every couple of months. But at least now I have the luxury of just deciding that if I'm incompetent, I can fire myself because there's enough of a business there. Whereas in the early days, it's just constant and it's normal, and it is what learning is. If you doubt yourself and you don't know how to do something, it's because you're learning. So, I'm not saying that the aim is to feel like that every day, but it is how it is. And I guess one of the things I would encourage entrepreneurs to think about is whether you're really up for that. Because I think lots of people, and look, we should all dream big. Anyone can deliver anything. Anything is possible. There's no magic that me or Asha has that anybody else in the audience doesn't have. But it is hard, and people should go into it wide open and say, "Am I up for that?" And frankly, I think if I knew what I know now, would I have done that? Would I have left my very well-paid job that I liked a lot, that was pretty easy? I'm not sure I would actually. But anyway, I'm here now, so I have to carry on. But, at least do it really with open eyes, with real awareness of what's coming next. But honestly, that feeling is, I'm sure, the same for every founder.
Thank you. That's thank you so much. A lot of honesty there. Thank you, Avin. Asha, from yourself.
So for me, I'm very analytical, probably because of my nature of my training. So I doubt myself. You have that imposter syndrome. And what I realized was I learned when the imposter syndrome rears its head. So I started to understand it more so I could use it to my advantage. Because actually doubting yourself and having imposter syndrome doesn't have to be negative, because actually what it does is it makes sure you're on your A game constantly and you research everything a little bit more, and whatever you put out there is at a really good quality, because you're thinking somebody's going to find you out, or it's not as good as it should be, so you work on it even more so. So what imposter syndrome's actually helped us to do is actually put a standard in the market that it's untouchable because of the nature of where we've taken products and services and training. So actually what I've learned to do is how to use imposter syndrome to make our business successful. And when I have got imposter syndrome, that's when I've taken risks and done even more. When imposter syndrome isn't there, I get a bit lazy and kind of think, oh, everything's fine, it's quite stable now. So actually it's using it to your advantage. And I think when that stops, then maybe it's time to go into something else when your imposter syndrome isn't there, because something's going to fall for me.
Oh, that's interesting. So fear is fueling positivity there. I like that. Excellent.
I'm going to add something. When I started, in line with that, when I started Housekeep, I went to see one of my uncles who'd built a successful business, and he said, well done, very good. I'm sure you'll do very well. And then he said, one of the things that I find is I wake up every day and I go to bed every day terrified about what my competitors are doing and how they're going to take my business away from me. And then he's like, you should feel that fear. And I was kind of like, thanks. That was the worst pep talk I've ever had. But it's true, I'm afraid to say it's kind of true. You've got to be constantly on it. You've got to constantly use that. And constantly be thinking about, if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. So what's next?
Really interesting. So constantly on your A game. I like that. So we've got a lovely question come from Matt Barnsley. Hello, Matt Barnsley. Aside from revenue, how do you define and monitor success in the scale-up journey?
As a social entrepreneur, our success is actually measured by impact made on people's lives, on children's and families' lives, and that's before financial success or team growth or etc. So we have that in-house built-in metrics to measure how do we change a school's culture, do we reduce behavioural incidences, do we reduce HR spend, do we enable people to come back to work quicker, do we reduce exclusion rates. So all of those metrics are inbuilt into our systems and processes, and that's how success is measured for social enterprise. It's that and the business side of things.
That's really interesting. So positive outcomes built as KPIs.
Yeah.
Excellent. No, thank you for that. Avin, over to yourself.
Yeah, I think I guess there's a couple of elements to it. The first is what we actually measure. And I think we measure everything. And then what we actually care about is, are we fundamentally making users happier? Because if we are, then they'll stay. And if we don't, then they won't stay. And, for us, if a user doesn't stay, then there is no revenue. So, look, the two are related, but we start from, let's try to make a user's life better. Let's measure that, and let's try to do it. And then I guess, on a more personal level, look, I care about numbers, I care about revenue, I care about finance. It's just what my, my background is. But, the things that you get a kick from, that you think, what, this is worth all of the, you don't look at a revenue number and think, oh, that was a really tough month. You look at a cleaner, say, hey, this is great. I love working with Housekeep. I can earn more money and frankly be happier and safer and spend less time traveling. Thanks so much, guys. That's what you get the kick from. Or, you know, one of your employees at head office comes up with something just way beyond your expectations, and you think, hey, that's something good. Those are things that you get a kick for. And again, the things that get you down are the opposite of that. You know, the users telling you that your product's crap, which happens a lot, or your employee is telling you they think you're a crap boss, which also happens sometimes, just not in those words. And those are the things that make you soul search, think, you know, should I be doing this? And so I think, look, of course, it's right to measure the revenue, the profit, and the cash. Those are important things. But I think what actually drives founders is probably the less tangible things in reality.
Amazing. So customer satisfaction, also employee satisfaction as well. I'm hearing a bit of purpose-led in there as well. Are you making it easier for them? Are you making their lives better and easier for them in terms of working for Housekeep? So that's really powerful. Okay, so I just want to go through kind of final words of wisdom. So you can do an essay if you want on this one, both of you. Those entrepreneurs who are listening, and obviously this will be streamed later on, what words of wisdom would you give them in terms of going from that startup to scale up journey? Ash, over to yourself first.
I think if you think the most difficult part of the startup is taking that leap of faith into leaving your secure job and starting up, the next leap of faith is pushing boundaries even further, because when you're at a scale up point, things are generally quite comfortable for you in that you've reached a nice point in your business. So to take it to scale up requires you to, it felt like for me anyway, like a startup again. And it requires that extra leap of faith, but it also feels quite risky because you're not sure. So it's going with that gut instinct, believing in yourself, but most importantly, stop looking at what other people are doing. Because you're spending so much time looking at others and looking over your shoulder, you actually then lose that energy that you're focused, investing in your own business. So what I say is do you. If people are looking at what we're doing, which happens, and people try and do what we try and do, nobody can do it the same way as you. And I had to really come to terms with that, because I was really scared of all technologies out there, people just copy it. But actually there's the stuff behind the scenes that people can't do, and that's because it's unique to you. I couldn't run Avin's business and he couldn't run mine, because they're the founders, they're the ones that do it in a particular way. So it's remembering that when you do start to doubt yourself or start to look at what somebody else is doing and comparing yourself against that.
And that passion, that culture comes from you as the founder anyway, and that's what you instill in your business, isn't it?
Yeah.
So excellent, thank you for that. Avin, what words of wisdom would you give to those who are listening, who are thinking of, you know, they've got a startup and they're looking to scale it up? What words of wisdom?
I don't know if I didn't old enough to be wise, but obviously the grey hairs.
Can't see them from here.
I suppose it's sort of two or three things. So the first is, well, let's start with the reality that 99% of businesses are going to fail. So your chances are slim. Let's ground ourselves in reality first, and then let's say I think three things. The first is anything is possible. You know, neither me nor Housekeep nor Asha or her business or any other business that's got along the way really fundamentally has anything particularly exciting. I hope you take this the right way, Asha. I don't mean it quite like that, but you know, we've not got any magic beans or magic sauce. It's just, you know, we've worked hard and we've kept applying ourselves over a long period of time, and that compounds up something useful. So there's no one in this audience who can't build a big business. Everybody has the ability, or can create the ability by learning, and everybody can work hard if they choose to. I guess the second thing I would say is, you know, do it with open eyes, ground yourself in reality. It's a hard, long journey. It's not a 3-year magic beans. There are always some, okay? There are always going to be some magic beans businesses. There'll be 10 people that make WhatsApp and sell it for 10 billion, but it's probably not going to be you. And to ground yourself in the reality of, do you want that long journey? that hard journey, or would you rather not? And if you're not up for it, you won't be successful. So, make that choice with really wide open eyes up front. And then I guess third, once you've made that choice, kind of enjoy the journey. I know as much as anybody else that people focus on the end point. I do it myself, but try to enjoy the days where you have that pit in your stomach and you've locked yourself in the toilet. Try to enjoy the days that go well. Try to celebrate the awards. I'm terrible at this. My team have to nudge me, or somebody has to say, hey, you should probably say something positive. Don't always focus on the next hill, the next mountain, because there will be more. And try not to get, two side swipes in either direction along the way, and just say, hey, this is all part of my learning experience. And hey, I deserve to celebrate this success along the way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow, where has that hour gone? Honestly, thank you guys. I mean, just want to say a massive thank you for your personal insights, your shares. Just from what I'm hearing from yourselves, your resilience and your entrepreneurial spirit really comes across, and you are trailblazing in your industry. So thank you so much for today. Thank you to all our listeners as well.